Starting tomorrow, we got the Selector here. And you can't choose Bomb Model Kana, you can't choose Ilyanov, you can't choose Senya. So you're going to have to choose a character that's none of those, not Yuna, not Xeno, but any other non-limited character you can choose from that's RGB. So let's pretend you're not going for an imprint and you're actually just going for a new character. Let's say you're a new player, for instance, right? Valencia, she ain't it. I wouldn't go for her. She's really fallen out of favor, not that strong anymore. Araminta is not a good character. This is waifu purposes only. Wouldn't recommend it. Baron Sazan, no. Do not go for them. It's absolutely not worth it. Basar, he's a decently strong unit in PvP. He's a king of Arena and Guild War. He's fallen off a little bit in RTA. He's still a decent unit to have built. I wouldn't recommend going for him unless you're really getting into hardcore PvP and you don't have another character that you really want over him. So, yeah. Okay, we've got Bologna. Wouldn't recommend her. She's currently on banner as well, but I wouldn't really go for that. Don't do it. You can't choose Ball Model Kana. They're not letting you choose the super new characters. Cecilia, also wouldn't recommend her. She's an okay knight, but she doesn't really have an amazing place in the game. She's not really a must-choose character compared to other things. Selene, I love this character, and her artifact is about to get buffed to make her a little bit more viable. However, I would not recommend going for Selene. She is not really all that top tier. She's not a must-pull. She also hasn't had a banner for a little bit, so she could come around sometime. Who knows, right? But she's not a must-pull either. Limited unit right here. One of the biggest waifus for a lot of people in the game. I wouldn't recommend getting her, however. She just had her banner. It's not really worth it. Charles, he's really fallen out of favor. He's kind of just fallen out of the game, to be perfectly honest. Rem is basically Charles on steroids. He's not offering you a lot. Wouldn't recommend it. Now, this is the first character that I might recommend right here. Charlotte. Charlotte has become one of the most top-tier bruisers in the game. And she's actually just by far one of the strongest bruisers that I've seen in recent times. You can run her own Symbol of Unity or Holy Sacrifice. Justice for All has fallen off a bit. But she has reach for characters like Spectre, Tenebra, and Landy, and actually being fire can be pretty beneficial versus Landy as well. She's also pretty damn good versus Violet, too. So she's really strong. If you want to truly build an amazing Charlotte, you need good lifesteal gear. But if you just want to build a good one, you can just go speed set and just Symbol of Unity, high aggro, big damage, and she clears out teams really fast. Chloe, wouldn't recommend her. She's not even that amazing for Wyvern. It's not worth it. Shu, even after her EE and her buff in the past, she doesn't really see much use. I think she's not really worthwhile unless you love the character, and if you love the character, I think there's something wrong with you. No, I'm just kidding. But, like, I don't think she's really worth it. Not really a priority pick. Right now, I think it's important to try and choose a character that's priority. These are some MLs. Destina, I wouldn't recommend choosing Destina. She has really lost her place in the game. She has bigger heals than a character like Amelia, but Amelia is just way more useful in the game right now. So she's not really doing a whole lot for you. These are a couple limited characters. Ida, I forgot this character existed, and I'm sure most people have, actually. She is a forgettable character because she does absolutely nothing. She has never been good, and she's just kind of useless, to be honest. She needs a big buff, really. Elena, she's actually a decent unit to have. A lot of people have her built ever since her buff. She's good versus Cleave. She's useful versus characters like Carrot. She's not really a big priority character, but she's a very useful character to have built. Although I'm not a huge fan of her and her giant forehead. Her forehead isn't quite as endearing as Charlotte's is. This is a limited character, Ervelyn, nobody actually really wants Ervelyn. His Boy Scout design isn't really popular, and he's not really that strong. He's not really good against almost anything either, to be honest. If you Oxlots push him with full damage, yeah, he can one-shot a tank. But if you Oxlots push somebody with full damage and you can't kill somebody, like, what are you doing, right? Like, you messed up then. Fairy Tottenham you can't choose. Some MLs. Flan. Now, Flan is actually a damn good unit. She's a really, really good cleave unit to have, like very strong. She's also a decent unit to round out a draft near the end. She's basically a better Oxlots who's also much more attractive than Oxlots. So that's a couple big benefits right there. And she's a pretty strong character overall. But if you're not really going with cleave or kind of trying to speed battle people, then she's not really going to be all that useful compared to some of the other characters, though she is kind of high up there overall as a useful character. She's from episode 3, and this selector ticket lets you choose anybody except for the aforementioned characters. Haste. This character is crap. There's nothing else to say. He's bad. He's gotten a buff. He's still bad. Don't choose him. This is a limited character. You cannot choose Ilyanov. She's one of the only characters you can't choose. Isaria. Now, this is actually a pretty useful character for PvE. If you already have a character like Tamarin, which we'll go over soon, probably, she's actually a great complement to that character. And she's just really useful for getting your PvE set up, basically. Overall, really useful. She's good for challenge content as well, and in Abyss, I would say. But she's not really much of a PvP character. She's all right there, but really nothing special. So mostly just PvE and get everything set up right here. Saria. Poeric, he's actually about to get a buff. So this character could be good. He actually could be getting really good. We're not 100% sure yet, but they're swapping how his S2 and S3 works. They're swapping the stealth, and he can hold his own book, so he might actually become a really useful character to have on your team. He actually could be really good. We'll have to see. Let's see. We've got Kayron here. Kayron's really fallen out of favor. You don't really need this character anymore, to be honest. So I wouldn't really recommend Kayron. He gets basically wrecked by most of the meta characters in the game. He's kind of just useless at this point, to be honest. So I wouldn't really recommend him other than husbando purposes, I guess. Ken, this character's bad. This character is actually just, he's not good. Nobody uses him. I don't recommend it. Skip. Easy skip. Kisei. This character is actually good. She has the same base stats as Arbiter Vildred, and is built usually faster, maybe with a little bit less damage. So she requires pretty good gear, has an amazing EE, and she's a really, really, really good character. But you need pretty quality gear, and she's mostly a counter pick, specifically into things like Carrot at the moment, although she puts out insane amounts of damage, honestly. So she can be a pretty decent pick if you're missing a good speed DPS, because you usually pick her late in a draft. Wow, one of the best tanks in the entire game. If you don't have a good tank in PvP, he is definitely there for you. He gets to easily free kill another unit with very little cost. He gets a nice defense buff. He holds Aureus. He basically does everything you need. He's existed since day one, and he's still a top tier character. He's just always good. He's literally just always a solid unit at all times. Landy. This is a limited unit, so you can't choose her. Actually, let me add one more thing. This is probably high on the priority list for characters to choose from the ticket. He's definitely one of the best tanks overall in the game. And having a very solid tank, especially somebody who can kill another unit, is pretty big. He's a really good one. Lineca, unfortunately, she's fallen out of favor. I mean, hard. She's basically useless. Nobody uses this character. She's too weak, I'm sorry to say. I know there's some fans of Lineca out there, but she's not going to be able to do anything for you. She's a waifu unit. Lilius, people don't use her as much, but she's actually a pretty solid PvE character, and in PvP she's decent, but in the current state, nobody really uses her in PvP, so I wouldn't exactly recommend it unless you're a huge fan of the character. She's not bad by any means, but it's just when you compare choosing Lilius to somebody like Crow, it's kind of an easy choice to go for Crow over Lilius, even though she is used for different purposes. She's a strong unit, but just not a priority. Lilibet, I would not choose this unit. I have a plus 15 Lilibet. It's not worth it. I really don't recommend it at all. Ludwig, no, he's a bad unit. He's severely power crept, basically. Just isn't able to do anything at this point in the game. Luluka, she's not very worthwhile getting either. People use her as a Wyvern unit. She's decent in some PvE stuff, but not really anything special. I don't recommend it, even though I like this unit. I can't recommend it at all. This is a limited unit. Melissa, this character is not very strong. She needs an EE or some sort of upgrade to actually be viable. It's unfortunate she has the same base stats as Ludwig, but she just can't really do too much on her own. She needs absurd gear to be able to work as a very basic killer of specific units, assassin. It's just not really worth it. I wouldn't recommend her, even though she is a waifu unit. Mort, this slot machine man here is about to get a buff. Um, is he going to be good? We don't know for sure. The Great Mortelix could be a decent unit, or he could still just be so unreliable that people don't use him. Time will tell, but I would say he seems like he might turn out to be a decent unit. Although he has about 100 different RNG checks every time he attacks or somebody attacks him. So, I can't exactly recommend this character, especially not for newer people if you're newer to the game. Mui, so the clown waifu Polamau here, she's a decent unit. She's okay, but she's not really a priority unit at all. She's alright, but it's kind of hard to use her a lot of the time. Not many people are able to utilize her very well. She's not bad, she's just not all that great, really. So, now we're on Pavel. So this guy, he's one of the strongest units in the game right now. However, he actually requires pretty decent gear, and he's a PvP-only unit. So he requires Tagahel's book holders on your team to truly work. So he's not really a character that works alone. He's an incredibly powerful last pick on a team, usually becomes a must ban. However, the new ML4, Angelica, that's coming out, might completely invalidate this character and counter him, but he's still going to be a solid last pick in a draft. Even if she is a counter, most of the time people aren't picking Pavel early anyways, so it's not really that big of an issue. Oh yeah, also, he's usable in Banshee as well for Banshee one-shot. He just puts out an absurd amount of damage, and his EE giving an attack buff to an ally makes him really powerful in cleave and just rush down comps, and also for something like one-shot Banshee. He's a pretty solid unit. He's some of the best base stats in the entire game with an EE that gives crit chance. So you don't need insane gear to build him, but he scales heavily with gear. You don't have to make an absurdly fast one too that always takes turn one. You could make like a 250 speed one mid-range that goes faster than most units and just build him high damage. He's a pretty damn solid unit though. So if you need something like that to round out your draft, he can be good for endgame PvP like that. Alright, Politis. So, this character is the biggest mistake that Epic 7 has ever made. She not only hard counters Cleave, but Cleave uses her to hard counters to Cleave. And she is on every single defense team in Arena. If you get to Champion, you will see her in almost literally every single defense team. There will be a Politis, simply so that you cannot cleave that team easier. That it takes more effort to cleave the team and rarer units. So, this character, if you are having big troubles with cleave, and you want to up your defense win rate, or not even your win rate, but less people will attack you in general, this could be a decent pick. This character is definitely one of the biggest mistakes in the game. The new Angelica might be an even bigger mistake. Time will tell. But this is a pretty solid character for those kinds of purposes, but they're not exactly a priority pick for newer players, because newer players don't have to worry as hard about these kinds of things, and I'm sure that Politis will probably get a banner by the time somebody who's a new player now really would need her. Ravi, as much as Lakari wants this character to be the best character in the game and work, sadly she is very outclassed at the moment. A character like Rem basically just craps all over her, and even in type advantage. Ravi is just not good in the current meta. She's killed too easily. Too many of the strong bruisers right now are able to beat her. Overall, she's having a lot of problems. She's not feeling so good. So, as sad as it is to say, I would not recommend this character, even though she's pretty solid in PvE and early PvP as well. Ray. So, this guy Ray right here, He's a solid anti-debuff character. So if you really need one, you could go for him. But overall, he's not really the best. He actually has good base speed. I believe this goes up to 110 or 12. He's one of the fastest Soul Weavers in the game. And he's also grass, so something like Fairy Tale Tenebria has a 50-50 of hitting him. But I don't really recommend picking a character like this. You want to pick a very strong character usually, especially if you have something as nice as Selector. I wouldn't really recommend picking a character that's just purely relegated to a counter pick like this and something very specific. Rem, you cannot choose this character, better or worse. Rowana. Now, this character is really useful in PvE. She's insanely good for Hell Raid or certain challenge content. She's good in expeditions. She's useful in PvP for countering certain characters. I don't think this character is like the highest priority, but if she's the type of character you need and you have most of the other stuff that you require, she does something very specific a lot of characters don't do. She's good for Katie's, she's good for Hell Raid bosses, she's useful in Expedition, she's useful in very specific areas where other characters can't do the same thing, where punishing dual attacks and healing the team and pushing you forward can go from making a fight difficult to a complete breeze. So she's actually really useful for those specific areas if you're having trouble with that specifically. But she's not a super high priority unit where you're like, I have to have this. This is a limited character. Senya, you cannot choose from the ticket because I'm assuming she's too new of a character. Now, Says, this character's bad. I do not recommend this character at all. He requires more than just an EE. He needs a straight up big ol' buff. So, wouldn't really recommend Says. Sigrid, if you're having trouble with Wyvern, you theoretically could go with her, but personally, I don't recommend going with Sigrid once you're already into the game, unless you have to have that help on Wyvern. So, she's what most players should start with anyways, so I wouldn't recommend this character at all, really. Soul Bad Guy is a limited character. Starting to get kind of far down there. Limited character. I don't know why they have this character here. She just doesn't even exist in the game yet, really, as character. Tamara. Now, this is probably one of the most important characters in the game for people to have. This character literally is like #1 PvE. I would say that if you do not own this character, that you should go for her. I would recommend it. I really would. This character basically just simplifies all PvE. Not literally every PvE thing that she can be used in. Like, you can't use her in Wyvern Hunt, for instance. But she trivializes Abyss, she trivializes Hell Raid, trivializes a few hunts, and also including expeditions. She is easy to build. I have a level 50 Tamarin. I refuse to get her level 60, and she's still working. Like, I have her on garbage gear. She's just free. She just makes everything free. If Spectre Tenebria is the ultimate damage in PvE, Tamarin is the ultimate healer and, like, buffer for PvE. She's incredible. I think that anyone who doesn't own this unit should choose her. She's just insane, honestly. She's at the top of the list for units from a Selector ticket. Tenebria, as much as she is one of the poster girls of Epic 7, I do not recommend this character. She's very weak right now. The only time I ever see her used is people using her in Fire Expo. Just doesn't really do a whole lot, sorry to say. Overall, very weak. She's a very powerful imprint for two Tenebrias that are much stronger than her, however. Tywin. Who is this? This is just a worse version of Flan in almost every conceivable way. He's bad. Do not recommend. Mildred. He's a good speed imprint character for Cleave. He's useful in stuff like Azumanic. I don't really recommend choosing a character like this. You don't really need a Dog Walker Farmer anymore. Everyone gets Arbiter Vildred for free anyways, or Spectre Tenebria, for that matter. But he's not necessary anymore. He's an okay unit, though. Violet, he's a premium bruiser right now. He basically automatically wins versus any water unit. He's insane. He requires a decent set of lifesteal gear to truly be able to pop off, but he is very, very, very good if you can actually use him. He requires a crap load of molas. You have to plus 15 him basically to get full use out of him. But if you can make him work, he can just RNG win so many battles of PvP. He makes everything a coin flip. Uh, Somehow he only has a 55% chance to dodge with Moonlight Dreamblade, but it feels at least like a 70% chance. Except when you're using him, then it feels like a 20% chance to dodge. But he's an incredibly good unit for PvP right now. But you really have to keep in mind, you need a good set of lifesteal gear. The Abyss lifesteal gear is good for beginners, but it's only going to carry you so far. Vivian, this character is useful in PvE mostly. She used to be an okay PvP unit, not really too much anymore. She's really good at setting up hunts for Banshee one-shot. She's good at setting up Azamanic one-shot. However, you don't really see her a whole lot in other content. She's not exactly a bad unit. She just doesn't really have much of a place in the game at the moment, other than those things. You're not really going to see her much in PvP, but she's a very fun character to use when you can, basically. Euphane, I do not recommend this character. She doesn't really do a whole lot, and she's just not that strong, really. You could theoretically use her to one-shot Banshee. I've seen her used in one-shots of Azamanic as well, but doesn't really do a whole lot for the player, honestly. So, and then both of these characters you cannot choose as well from the tickets. So that basically goes over every single 5-star RGB as far as I know. So, in conclusion, I would probably choose Tamarin first of all. I think she's the #1 character for PvE content if you don't have her, or if you're having trouble with any sort of Abyss, Hell Raid, anything like that. She just makes it so easy to get into. Then in the second tier, I'd probably put Blue Crow and Charlotte. I think they're both incredibly good units. I think Blue Crow is by far one of the best tanks in the game. Highly recommend that unit. He just gives so much to the team. He's been solid forever. He seems to be completely future-proof. He's just always a good unit to have available for PvP especially. He's not really amazing in PvE. There's other characters you can use for that, like Adventure Ross, for instance. But he's an amazing PvP tank, and he doesn't even require many Molagoras either, which is great. And Charlotte is just by far one of the best bruisers in the game right now. She does require a huge Mola investment. She's the type of character you would have to plus 15, so that could be a bit of an issue for some people. Oh yeah, also forgot to mention Violet would actually be also in this tier. He's a really good unit, requires pretty much plus 15 moles as well, so he's just like Charlotte a little bit mola intensive, and he requires pretty good gear, kind of like Charlotte as well. He would also like to have lifesteal gear. You kind of have to have lifesteal in him, while Charlotte it isn't as mandatory, but he's a really, really strong bruiser right now. He's weak to characters like Spectre, Tenebria, Landy, and Charlotte. However, he's incredibly strong versus water units. They literally cannot hit him. He has 100% dodge against them. It's non-water, he has a 55% chance to dodge. So technically, he could get unlucky and gets hit. But he's actually very strong. I've won a bunch of games where he pretty much soloed the entire team. Even against Blue Crow, if you have Aureus on your team, it becomes difficult for him to get a good horse off on you. Because he'll always miss and do reduced damage, and my Violet has like 15,500 health, so it makes it so the Crow has to horse at the perfect moment. He's just a strong unit overall. He's very threatening. He makes any early water pick really weak. He makes it so Fairy Tale Tenebria can't even touch him. Kisei can't do anything, Rem can't do anything to him. He's just very strong in some situations, and he becomes a force ban a lot of the time. And he's really fun to use. That's another important thing about him. Then, either on the same tier or slightly below, I would put Politis, one of the best cleave counters in the game. Great to have on your arena defense. Just an overall very useful character to have. Really powerful, can hold Tagahel's Book. She's just really useful if you're trying to be very serious about endgame PvP. But if you're not in endgame PvP or trying to transition to that, I don't think that you're going to have much use with her. Then we also have Pavel and Kisei. Those two units, I would maybe throw in Kawerik as well, but mainly Pavel and Kisei. Pavel, I would put in the second tier, but The new Angelica's coming out, which is going to hurt him, but also because not everyone is able to utilize him super well. He's more of a very endgame player kind of unit. So a lot of people who may need advice of what unit to pick might not really be the type of people who can use him, honestly. Kisei as well. She's a unit that requires pretty good gear. She requires the same type of gear you would give Arbiter Vildred, and a lot of people who have Arby can't afford to spare a lot of gear for her as well. She's a really, really solid unit. Her and Pavel fulfill a similar role where you pick them very late in a draft in RTA. Neither of them are super amazing in PvE, although Pavel can be used for some specific one-shots during like something like Banshee. And Kisei isn't really much of a PvE unit at all overall. Not that she's terrible at it exactly, but she's not especially good at it either. So I'd probably put both of them there, and then you might have some units like Rowan or Elena that are some decent picks as well, but I'd probably put them lower than them as well. But overall, I think that pretty much is all of the units that I would consider from that 5-star ticket, and I hope that this helped. Thanks for watching.